Hey everybody. Yeah, welcome to Parley Live. We are testing this new format and we will not have so many events in the next month, probably even for a full year. So we're getting used to broadcasting from the phone. And actually we are living up to that domain .tv, which we back then bought when we started Parley because nothing else was available. So today it's all about creating future. In this moment of crisis, in this moment of lockdown, in this moment where we are all like grounded. And we are grounding. We can't leave our homes, but on the other hand, we are reconnecting. And at Parley, we see this as a big opportunity to create future, to really dive deep into ourselves and say, what is the next chapter? How do we use this global experience, this global moment where pretty much everybody is in the same situation? It's at least experiences the threat in the same way. So today, the first conversation will happen with an artist, with a famous artist, not with any artist, with the artist, with Doug. We met Doug Aitken in 2016 after we had a workshop with NASA JPL in Pasadena, and we were thinking of how can we go space? How can we create this like super fascination around the oceans when everybody is like more inspired by spaceships going into the unknown? And on our way to the airport, we met Doug. And this conversation with Doug in his studio in LA was way more space than anything we heard before that day. And that led to the first project. And that led to a friendship, to a partnership, to a very deep exchange of ideas and thoughts. And today I want to welcome Doug as the first guest of Parley Live, this new format of Parley. And I tried to connect him in because we're still testing all of this here. So let's see if that works. Let me see if I find him. Here he is. Doug, get ready. And yeah. So,
hey, hello.
Hey, hi, good to have you.
Yes. Well,
how are you holding up there in LA?
I mean, these are strange times, and I think we're all trying to kind of sort through the white noise and the confusion, but to stay calm at the core and continue to move on.
So quickly, so people, I mean, of course, a lot of people know you, but some might not know you. So probably you want to give a little bit of a background, what it is you do, where you are, and how you experience that situation right now.
Yeah, of course. My name is Doug Aitken, and hello. And I make art in different mediums. I think I'm very interested in the idea that concepts can create art, ideas can create art, and art can be anywhere. It can be in any medium, any form. And I think that's one of the things that really led to my collaboration with Cyrill and Parley was, we had this idea to create an artwork in the ocean, under the ocean surface. And the title of the work was Underwater Pavilions. And it was something that took us a long time to develop because in a lot of ways, when you think of art, you primarily think of art existing inside museums, inside gallery spaces. And one of the things about underwater pavilions that was so challenging for us was how do you create an artwork that can exist under the ocean when the storms come from the North Pacific and the swells are pushing through, when the wind and the chop is creating turbulent seas? How does this sculpture not rip apart? And these are questions that I've really never had to confront in my practice of art making. And one of the amazing things about working with Parley was all of a sudden, we had this idea and it created a bridge, this kind of amazing bridge of collaboration. And we had oceanographers, marine biologists, all as collaborators. And we were able to really kind of talk about this crossover between what is art, how can an artwork function, how can it function in a completely different, unorthodox way, but also how can it be a way of sharing ideas with different communities, ecologists, ocean activists. And I think that leads to our conversation today on this fascinating Saturday morning.
And you learned diving. I mean, it was also your door into the sea. And I think that was, for me, a very special moment to see how many people went and overcame their fear and went down there. Because honestly, a lot of people are scared that the oceans are the home of the beast. How did you experience that?
Well, I think that, one of the things that you just mentioned about this project that was so unorthodox was, you couldn't simply see the work. You had to go under the surface of the ocean. You had to swim into it. You had to dive into it or snorkel. And I think that created a completely different condition because, like you mentioned, for some people, the ocean is a completely enveloping, comfortable space, but for other people, it's horrifying or scary or unsettling. And I think that every individual that experienced this work kind of had their own encounter that was very distinctively different than everyone else. And I kind of love that about it. I love this idea that you had to kind of, you had to open this door to the ocean and move inside it.
So today, when you look at the situation and the crisis that we are all experiencing, in the pre-interview, you connected it with nature and our relationship to nature.
Yeah, I think that, this is certainly a completely unprecedented moment in history that we're all going through right now. And, it's really quite amazing how it's absolutely international. And it's really kind of exposing our vulnerabilities, and I think that one of the things that we find ourselves lodged in as a society is acceleration. I think we find ourselves continuously moving forward. We have this kind of blind notion that progress is faster, is more quantity. But, I think in some ways I really kind of hope that this moment, I hope we get past this as a culture and we get through this and we survive. But I think that more than anything, I hope that we use this to reflect and to kind of really take inventory on this notion of acceleration and to look at other systems, to recognize that we're not kind of moving off the Earth, that we're part of the root system of the planet. We're part of the geology, the ecology of the planet. And for that, I think there is something that can come out of this, could possibly be a new reflection.
Do you think it changed the way, you're saying that, but it changes the way we feel part of that planet and being actually collaborating, being on eye level with nature and not like doing whatever we want and pretty much taking whatever we want and feel that we can dominate this place?
Well, I think that, if you look at much of the kind of current space race of the last 5 years, and you hear the conversations surrounding this idea, it almost feels like there's this kind of movement for technology to leave the Earth behind, and to find other planets, other spaces to colonize. But I think really, what is right in front of us is one of the most fantastic things we will ever encounter. And this planet is filled with mysteries. There's so much there. And I think that also, I want to just bring that back to Parley for the Oceans, because I think also when we look at this idea of the planet Earth, this ship that we're on, to paraphrase Buckminster Fuller, I think that really, you look at over 70% of the Earth is underwater, is underneath the oceans. And
so unexplored.
There's so little about.
Yeah. So, that was the original idea also. And I think that's where we met, our thoughts met, was that we are trying to go off this planet. We are fascinated by finding life in the outer space, while the abundance of life was here before we came. And now we are decimating and killing everything off. While this is the magic planet. There's not so much else out there right now that we can access to. But as an artist, it was not per se always your environmental focus. Your focus was not per se environmental, right? I felt that a lot changed. You worked with landscape. You always worked outside the museum. But also, when I look at the last pieces, then I felt like, whoa, you took a very strong stand for this. Did you become more like a warrior for the sea or for nature, or how did it shift?
We have to love Cyrill. I think that for me, I was very interested in a return to the real. I was very fascinated by this idea that, kind of over the last decade or so, as we kind of move faster and our lives become more screen-based, more digital, we find ourselves moving faster, but also the flow of information is greater. I think there was a statistic that last year more images were created ever than the history of humankind before that. And that simple sense of quantity and speed, I think what's happened is almost created this tunnel, and the tunnel's gotten narrower and narrower, and it's moving faster and faster. And that is kind of how we occupy space, how we consume information, the amount of information that's bombarding us. And I feel almost like as that tunnel gets narrower, we almost find that we have a new desire for the organic systems. We want to be in places that are physical and tactile. We want to discover things. We want to go off the grid. We want to find things that are unpredictable, that aren't screen-based, that aren't digital, you know. And I think that that's really, you know, I think that's really kind of coming to a zeitgeist with this moment that we're in now, where we all of a sudden find ourselves forced to stand still.
And we're confined. We can't go really per se into nature. I mean, you're looking out of your house, they're going surfing here and then, but people often sit now in their homes and they're being told to stay there. So they're actually more or less forced to go into the digital world more than ever. And yeah. I mean, there must be now, I mean, in me, there's this growing desire of just running to the beach or running to any forest, just like leave the house. I mean, it's like as if we would be been put into a pressure cooker right now. Yeah. Do you think that situation will like change the world, or will we just go back to, oh, I go back to the next restaurant madness and consume as widely as before?
Well, I mean, you're kind of a great example of that, Cyrill. You know, I think every time I visit you in New York, you're at the same cafe, ordering the same dishes. But now you find yourself, you know, with a rooftop garden, and you're obsessed with this rooftop garden and actually seeing, you know, I won't let your landlord know, but you know,
I'm growing stuff. Yeah. I just looked at the water here, and there are 3 seeds of a lemon in there, and I was right away seeing 3 plants.
But I think that we, you know, there's different chapters to this perhaps, and you know, this chapter that we're in now is one of you know, it's anxiety, it's reflection, it's deceleration. But I do think that as we come out of this, we have to come out of it in a different place. It's necessary, and we will. And I think it's up to us as individuals to shape that. You know, we shouldn't look for direction. We should let our voices be heard.
And the crisis, to be honest, yes, this is a big crisis right now, and it's very threatening. On the other hand, though, if the animals would have CNN and would broadcast to us and tell them about the crisis we are for them, that would look a bit worse, because we are killing millions of lives and species are going into extinction. Yeah. And I guess that now it's the first time that we actually experience that nature has something to say, or could say something that really hurts us. Because we grew up, or last, I would say 10, 20, 30, probably even 50 years, we lived with that illusion that we can just dominate everything and control anything. We could actually improve nature. That was the false thought. And I feel that this crisis right now is probably just a warning, could be just a warning shot. It could be a simulation, really, of how it would feel if this economic disaster or environmental disaster really comes to fruition. That means if the air is gone, if you can't leave your house anymore without a mask for good, and not just until somebody found a vaccine. Do you think that people can learn that this crisis today is probably related really to nature, and there is true need for it, or is that an abstract and intellectual thought of a few?
Well, first of all, I wanted to recommend a book to anyone who's interested. There's a book called The World Without Us. And this is a book that came out, I don't know, 10 years ago or something.
The World Without Us.
The World Without Us. And it's really, it's a kind of amazing book that's a study of the man-made landscape, the built landscape, as if there were no humans starting today. What would happen? What would happen to the hotels made of cheap sheetrock? What would happen to the highways and the asphalt cracking? How would these spaces get reclaimed by the natural landscape, or the animals, or the birds? And it's interesting to kind of think of this, because, you know, I think the radical sprawl that we've created, and the, how do you say, the irresponsibility to the materials we use, the footprint that we have, I think those are things that we really need to take inventory of as we move forward. And, you know, it was about 20 years ago, we were doing a project. It was a book called I Am a Bullet, and the book was about the acceleration of culture. And we studied these different places. One of them was Las Vegas at the time. It was one of the fastest growing cities in America. I think it was the fastest growing city. And we had this conversation with this Uber developer in Las Vegas. And this man said, you know, he was bragging. He was saying, you know, I could sell 60 houses in a weekend. And if I get my salespeople out to the bar on Friday night, I really get them hyperactive, maybe they'll sell 80. And he was talking about this idea of houses that had a lifespan of maybe 5 years. The materials were so cheap. They were made immediately to be sold. But that sense of planned obsolescence was almost immediate. And I think that those ideas also that we need to kind of look at, you know, we need shelters. We need certain aspects like that, houses or places that we can occupy, but how do we build them to sustain? And how do we look at our palette of materials? How do we kind of reclaim a sense of responsibility for the impact that we're making? And I think that's
a design challenge. I mean, all over. And I mean, you're looking at where we have spiraled into is the opposite. It's like not taking risk. Most of the companies don't think so far. They just want to sell their stuff. And actually, they're not unhappy if these things fall apart very quickly. But on the other hand, that's exactly the opposite of what we should do. And we at Parley find that there is need for a material revolution where all these toxic substances, but also these like old thoughts of exploitation are the past. And I wonder, there is so much right now that is destructive. And I wonder what role the artist can play besides inspiring with the artwork, besides speaking out. But what role can the artist or art in society play for this massive design challenge that we are facing?
Mm-hmm. I think that, you know, I think that that's a complex and multi-layered question. And, you know, I'll try to dive in
a second. One sentence.
Yeah, one sentence. One sentence, yes. But I think that really the role of art is it's a space for questioning. It's a space for searching. It's a space for experimentation, for ambiguity. It's a space for like challenging ethics and looking at different possibilities. So I think if we look at art as this kind of laboratory, this kind of space for innovation, then it does have a very, very pertinent value right now in society. And I think art can exist in all shapes and forms, and art can be incredibly didactic and immediately political, or it can be very ambiguous and very mysterious. And I think there's room for everything.
Because when you're looking at all these issues that we are facing today, all these environmental pre-crisis moments, or even already crisis moments where nobody is looking at, like mass extinction, we are actually in the 6th mass extinction event. Diminishment of animals and biodiversity, and actually I really like the chemistry are changing in rapid speed, the chemistry of our planet. And I think it's very obvious right now because we see the inactivity that we are all forced into right now shows very quick scientific evidence of like what happens if we're not operating. Suddenly the earth is not shaking too much anymore. Suddenly pollution is going away. So it actually feels that the planet could heal itself quickly, rather fast, if we would disappear. Mm-hmm. But it brings me back to the materials, what you mentioned. I mean, we can learn so much from nature, right? I mean, in the 50 years, we developed technologies that are not so smart, and nature had millions of years. Is there like a fascination from these kind of new materials when you're looking at making art, when you're looking at also other things that are not per se in your focus, like creating houses or products? Do you feel that these items that we're using today, and I'm including such items, they're just like old school? Do you have the thirst for something new?
I think technology is kind of a double-edged sword. And I think that we need to always own the authorship of how we use technology. I think, you know, we kind of find ourselves living in a landscape where every season there's kind of a new set of inventions of tech that are kind of put out in front of us for us to choose, for us to use, for us to move forward with. And what happens when the engineer surpasses society? The engineer moves faster, the designer moves faster than what society really needs. And I think we find ourselves in this conundrum like that right now, where we kind of, do we really need an updated iPhone every season, every year? How many apps can we consume? And I think that goes back to us as individuals. We need the voice of each and every one of us to have the power to say yes, but also to say no. and to say what we need. And I think that that idea of technology and creativity is a very fascinating one, because certainly there's incredible breakthroughs. There's ways to, mill body parts for someone who's amputated digitally, for across the board, from medicine to humanitarian reasons. But at the same time, I think it always needs to be led by the individual, by the idea, by the purpose, not technology first, but the individual first.
Yeah, that comes with the idea of outdated. Like something is outdated, a style is outdated, a collection is outdated. And I think this is an invention it's an economic invention.
Yeah.
It's how can you sell more stuff? And that actually, how can you replace things that actually still work or they're still okay? And we see now how unnecessary all these things are, because our industry is down. And at this moment, we don't really think about the next fashion collection or the next version of an iPhone. We go back to the basics, right? We are thinking about, some people think about toilet paper a lot, and others think about what could I cook, what I didn't cook yesterday. And even other people think about what could I even eat because I have nothing to eat. And I find that probably it's the moment to invent some things new, like durability of products. But I guess that's not, even if we feel that the power is with the consumer, it's only a few who can actually make that decision, right? That say, you know what, I'm running around with an old iPhone. I'm not following the peer pressure. I'm wearing the same T-shirt every day, or I buy 10 of them. It's not so many people out there who feel free and, I would say, self-confident enough to stick with old stuff. Is there an encouragement from your side of how can you shift your mind towards
maybe we bring back grunge.
Yeah. And a lot of safety pins. A culture of repair, a culture of I personally find it very nice to have an inventory and to say, okay, this is broken. How can I actually fix it? Even if it's a lot of effort. Yeah.
Maybe you can talk about, some of your projects with ocean plastics. I'd love for everybody to hear more about that from you.
I think what we saw back then, when we started Parley was, and that shocked us, we saw that we are steering towards a total disaster. And we weren't aware about any of that. So in 2012, when we started Parley, we learned from Captain Paul Watson back then, who founded Sea Shepherd, and he was arrested in Germany. We learned that the oceans would pretty much die off in our lifetime. And that shocked us. And I think that nobody really put it on the front page back then was intense for us to understand. And when you went further and further, we realized that in our minds, we realized that all these issues are pretty much based on economy and the way we're doing business. And then we felt we are not protesters, and we are not people that shame people and point fingers. We are we are innovators, we're creators. And that led us to the understanding that for a lot of these things, we actually are responsible as a class in society, because we come up with the ideas. We deliver the designs. We help to form and grow audiences. And if you also add the scientific community to the creative community, then you can say all the technology comes from us. And why would we do that? Yeah, why would we support this kind of economic spiral that hits us all, our whole species, against the wall? And we felt that we should just look at ourselves and say the creative community should take the lead here. We should look into the mirror and say, it's us who have to bring the change, not waiting for anybody else and not blame anybody else. And the artist, to be honest, and working with you or working with artists is the best, because two intentions come often out of that. The artist is she or he wants to create something, and and often finds, and you are I would say, a very good example for that. You created this universal language of exciting people that you need to bring an artwork together and learn from them. And suddenly you become this master collaborator. Look at the underwater pavilion project. You speak to people from governments, or speak to this guy who develops a submarine and convinces all of them who had no relation to art that this is a good thing to do. And they go home after that project and they feel like they learned something and the horizon opened for them and something happened and they change their mind in the process. So collaborating with you or collaborating with artists in general for us, and we collaborate a lot with artists, is not only about the product itself, the underwater pavilions that float there, that you can visit, that speak to you. It's the process, really. It's what you learn when you engage and when you give all what you can.
Yeah, very much, very much. I think also just hearing you speak about that, it made me think about what is the value of a project like this? What value of, say, our collaboration on water pavilions or anything else that's kind of unorthodox as an artwork. And I think that, maybe one of the things that we can really look for in art is to find moments where there's almost a wedge in reality. We suddenly see what we thought we knew differently, afresh. We see our patterns and our repetition broken. And I think one of the amazing things about art is this can happen in any medium, any form, any way. It can be choreography of the body, it can be sound, it can be light, it can be sculpture of form, or it can be that idea of seeking something out. And I think for myself, more and more, I'm increasingly fascinated by this idea of process, this idea that the viewer can undergo a journey. They can kind of step outside of the spaces that they know or the spaces that they go to receive art. And let's break that. Let's break from the architecture, the track lighting, the rooms, and let's look at this incredible realm of possibilities, which is outside our door, which is in the sky, which is in the ocean, which is in the mountains, the desert. And I think the possibilities are really kind of unlimited. And I don't mean simply to make an object and superimpose it someplace, but to work with the natural environment, to work with the systems, where the artwork becomes a system that's perhaps even growing or changing over time or embracing where it is and the duration of time. And I think that there was a project that I did, the first piece for me that was really kind of, that really touched on that was, it was ages ago, it was like 15, 20 years ago, it was in Brazil. And there's a beautiful space there called Inhotim. Inhotim is this kind of, it's a series of kind of jungle-like hills and valley. And basically this man, Bernardo Paz, just kind of invited artists to, if they had ideas to do things with the landscape, to do it. And I thought about this, and I thought it was funny. I was thinking about this project, and I was walking down the street, and my visual attention was everywhere. I was looking at the buildings, the people, the cars, the street, and all of a sudden I thought, isn't it amazing that I'm walking on Earth, but I'm not even aware of the Earth. The Earth is moving, the Earth is changing, it's alive underneath me, every day, every minute. Yet, it's not something that we even compute. We simply look at everything else that's optically in front of us. And I thought, maybe there could be a way that we could create an artwork that could tap into the movement of the Earth, the life cycle that's below us, the sense that the one thing that we think is stable and never in flux is constantly changing. So long story short, we made this piece, the Sonic Pavilion. And the Sonic Pavilion, there's a hole that goes about 700 feet into the Earth. There's a series of geological microphones that pick up the sound of the Earth's movement, the plates shifting, the geological change, and it amplifies them into a soundscape. It's very simple. And you go to this place and you walk inside this installation, the sculpture, which is still there, and you suddenly hear these sounds, and they're completely unorthodox, like moments where they're just violent and disruptive, and other moments are completely harmonic, like a drone that could last for maybe an hour, maybe several days. And it was really, I think for me, it was really kind of making that work where I realized that art could function on other frequencies than what we know. And art could also, it could merge with ecology. It could merge with the idea of the landscape. It could merge with an understanding or an awareness with the space that we occupy. And it's not something that we simply see and visually consume, but it's something that we can kind of merge with and become part of, perhaps. Sorry for the long monologue.
No, it's a beautiful one because it's about connecting. You can narrow it down to connecting to the language of nature and understanding and allowing that relationship. and exploring it and finding and being inspired by it. But on the other hand, also opening doors for others who probably don't have the time and don't believe in their instincts and in their feelings so much as the artist does. And I think when the question comes, how can creativity play a role in this? And how can everybody apply that to their everyday life? And what can people do who are not artists? I find that it's first of all like focusing on senses that otherwise probably don't have a right to be, or are not as seen as valuable if you're not an artist. You know, people often like believe in the logic, believe in the rationale, believe in the standards, believe in what they're being told, trying to avoid risk. And now is the time I feel that all of that doesn't really count. It's about like forgetting the standards, disrupting it in your mind, and just like recalibrating and saying, what would my standard be? How would I create a society? How would I create a product? How would I live my life if I now could? And I think that's what you so normal. You know, you just do, and you follow these thoughts, and you are open to them, and you take them very serious. But a lot of people don't believe in their ideas. They don't believe in their feelings. They believe actually in other things that are being told to them. And I think that's the moment probably to recalibrate that and get it in balance, I feel.
Well, I think, you know, hearing your hypnotic German accent reminds me of you know, I think one of the great German artists, Joseph Beuys. And, you know, I think one of Beuys... Only
my accent, huh?
Huh?
Only my accent that reminds you.
Accidental accent. But I think one of the great contributions of Beuys was this philosophy, really, that we're all artists. There is no hierarchy. It's an even field, and you know, everybody can create, and everybody can create in different ways, and in any way possible. It might be the use of language. It might be the written word. It might be a simple act that you do in your backyard just for yourself today. And I think that really, that more than ever is such a valuable thing to be reminded of, you know, kind of in this moment in time where I think so many of us feel almost suffocated at times by the politics, by the capitalism, by this kind of immense cloud of noise, which is not our own. And we at times feel victim to this. We feel impotent because of this. And I think that really we should never forget that we all have our voice, and our voice matters, and we can do things, we can act. And I think that's one of the rallying cries, I think, of Parley for the Ocean also is, you know, if you believe in something, you can fight for it.
Yeah, and that's the perfect outro. I mean, right. Doug, thank you for taking the time today. And we're going to share on our channels, we're going to share the projects that we did in the past. We're going to do a deep duck dive and speak more about the underwater pavilion so people actually have a picture to what we spoke about. And I want to thank the community and encourage everybody to create and to create future, to honestly question things first, disrupt these old ideas and create your own, and encourage people who do so, and just like use that bubble as a big design workshop, as an artist canvas. And I hope you stay safe. And this chat, of course, is on IGTV later. You can watch it again if you want to see Doug and his wallpaper, and I study a little bit what is in the back there. And I'm very grateful for all you guys joining us today. And I'm super happy about you being here, Doug. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for your time and this virtual community we're in. I mean, we're all in this together. So
stay safe.
Stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.